Working age people have now passed children and the elderly when it comes to those who are in need of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, also known as food stamps. Now, this is a bit of an issue because the majority of these people are not just working age, they're part of the working poor. So even though they're working, they still don't make enough money and they still need the government to help them. Now, a lot of conservatives and Republicans would make the argument that, hey, you know, this is happening because it's their dependency on the government. They don't want to work. They're not trying hard enough. But the reality is a lot of these people are working. They're just not getting paid enough, and they're not getting paid a living wage. Now, just to give you a sense of how much Congress wants to cut these programs, in November, Congress allowed increases to the program enacted at the start of the recession to expire, reducing benefits to about $9 to $11 per person per month and bringing the value down to an average of less than $1.40 per person for each meal. Okay.
So now, look, overall, I have mixed feelings on these kind of programs, right? I still have a part of me that's concerned that says if you give people unemployment for long enough that they might get a little hooked on it, right? And it's somewhat true of welfare. I support a welfare reform. Now, SNAP's a little different because people got to eat, right? But look at the numbers. $1.40 per meal. It's not like we're giving them a king's feast. And then, well, it's understandable that they got hooked on that. I mean, really going to get hooked on $1.40 per meal, and we're cutting it every day.
Yeah, and I love when members of Congress decide they're going to do like a cutesy experimentation to see what it's like to live on a budget like that, and they go in not realizing how difficult it really is, and then they come out and realize, wow, you know, these people can barely eat. They can barely afford to eat something nutritious. You see what I'm saying? So really interesting statistics on our workforce, because of course when it comes to these governmental programs, there is that assumption that these people aren't working enough, that they're lazy and they're just dependent on the programs. But the reality is a lot of them work, but minimum wage is so low that they just can't make ends meet. So if you look at 2007 to 2011, 52% of the fast food cooks, cashiers, and other frontline staff had relied on at least one form of public assistance, such as Medicaid, food stamps, and the Earned Income Tax Credit program. And that costs a lot of money. In fact, if you look at the U.S. fast food industry, they make $2 billion a year in sales, but they cost us billions upon billions of dollars, $3.8 billion per year in government money, because their companies aren't paying them enough. And the 10 largest fast food companies in the U.S. cost taxpayers more than $3.8 billion each year in public assistance because the workers do not make enough to pay for basic necessities themselves.
So that's the other huge factor that leans me towards not cutting the SNAP programs, right? Because it'd be one thing if you paid a decent wage and somebody could work at in a minimum wage job or a fast food job, et cetera, and have enough food for themselves and their family. It's another thing when minimum wage is at $7.25, when, if it had kept up with productivity since the 1960s, productivity meaning how well you worked, how much you produced, it'd be at about $24 an hour now, right? But it didn't, because they on purpose kept it incredibly low. So then you turn around and you go, yes, you're working, but we're paying you so little, you got to go on public assistance. What a bum. But I'm not a bum. You're just not paying me a workable wage, right? So I know that some people that get government assistance don't work as hard as they should. It's naive to think that that doesn't exist, right? But the bigger problem is the much larger number of people who are working and still need money to help feed their kids, and they're getting a pittance that's $1.40 per meal, and then Republicans turn around and cut it. And it's not just Republicans. Look, one more thing about that. So the usual Republican-Democrat fighting it over the SNAP program, right? So what did the Senate Democrats want? They wanted to cut it by $4.5 billion over 10 years. Now that's the Democrats in the Senate, right? The House, the Republicans, wanted to cut it by $39 billion over 10 years.
God.
Okay. So it looks like right now they're going to compromise on cutting it by $8 billion over 10 years. Okay. Now, the Republicans will turn around and go, well, that's closer to the Democratic number than the Republican number, so the Democrats won. No, wait a minute. Democrats had a terrible position to begin with. They agreed to cut it.
Yeah.
Not add to it, but to cut it. They agreed to cut it by $4.5 billion, and then what did they do? They wound up doubling their concession. right? So that's how the Republicans win. They demand such draconian, ridiculous cuts.
Yeah, that the Democrats have no choice but to.
I would have a choice. I'd be like, oh, you want to cut it by $39 billion? That's interesting. I want to add to it by $39 billion.
Yeah,
okay,
no,
now let's start the conversation.
That's the right way to negotiate. I mean, Republicans know how to negotiate. They know how to bully Democrats into getting exactly what they want. And I hate that. I hate that Democrats in Congress aren't stronger. Because the reality is $8 million, is it million or billion? I'm sorry.
Billion.
Jesus Christ. I mean, how much more could you possibly cut it? 1 in 7 Americans is dependent on this SNAP program, not because they're all lazy. They're dependent on it because you damn Republicans refuse to increase, not just Republicans, Democrats as well, refuse to increase the minimum wage. You need a living wage. It's that simple.
So on the minimum wage, I give Democrats a tiny bit more credit because they're at least trying there. But here, I think they lose on purpose. They get paid by the same guys, the same corporate guys who want their corporate taxes cut, who want the taxes for the rich cut and get it, right? And then turn around and go, oh my God, golly gee, we suck as Democrats. Oh, okay, Republicans, you win. Let's cut the SNAP program by $8 billion. And then, gee, I wonder how we got income inequality. Turns out we give you less and less for the job that you're doing. We give you less and less assistance. And we take all that and we give it to the rich in terms of tax cuts. And the Democrats pretend to fight it, but in the end, the Republicans win.